Hello everybody, welcome back. So today I wanted to talk about the books that I finished in April and the books that I'm currently reading. The first book that I read in the month of April was Moose and Murder by Elizabeth Logan. I really looked forward to this book because it seemed like the perfect cozy mystery for me. The title, Moose and Murder, has a play on my favorite animal, the moose. You can see that I have moose on my bookshelf. It's also set in an Alaska diner. I love diner cozies. I like any story set in Alaska. Unfortunately, this book did not work for me. The protagonist, Charlie, wasn't really an interesting character. I didn't connect with her. In this cozy mystery, Charlie runs her family's diner. Her parents have basically retired from running the diner and have given it to her. When her head chef, Oliver, is found dead, initially it's suspected that it was a suicide, but then it is deemed a homicide, and she ends up investigating it to figure out who bumped him off. I was just not connected to any of the characters, and so unfortunately I had to give it 2 stars. I will not be continuing the series. After that, I read volumes 6, 7, and 8 of the One Piece manga series. So I'm almost done with the East Blue saga. I think there are 12 books in that saga. I'm just really loving it. I particularly like the storyline with Senji and the cook. The cook was a pirate, but he is a gray villain. I mean, he is actually someone who is quite admirable in certain ways, even while he is a pirate. And then, of course, we learn more about Nami, and she is quite the duplicitous character. I'm not exactly sure where her loyalties lie. So I'm just really enjoying this series. It's a fun children's manga. Sometimes the action images are hard to follow, but for the most part, I'm finding these books really easy to get into. Then I finished the first book in the Mountain Lodge series by Diane Kelly, Get Away with Murder. I had read book 3 in March and I really enjoyed it, so I wanted to read book 1. In this one, Misty Murphy starts off the book having obtained an amicable divorce, and she decides to use the settlement money to purchase a mountain lodge in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And one way that she distinguishes her lodge from the surrounding Airbnbs and Verbos is by booking groups. So she reaches out to a yoga studio that wants to host a retreat in the mountains, and she gets this booking that is just really what she's looking for, right? The first large booking at her lodge. Unfortunately, the woman, Sasha, who runs the retreat and her yoga studio, is a very unpleasant woman. Naturally, she becomes a murder victim. And it is kind of like a locked room mystery. It's not entirely because people can leave the lodge, but because it is in such a remote place, it kind of feels like a locked room mystery. I also felt like at times there were some allusions to And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is one of my all-time favorite mysteries. So I really love that. Diane Kelly writes so well. All of the characters are so interesting and compelling, and of course the wintry backdrop is just incredible. I also felt like the mystery was very satisfying. There is one little thing that I find a couple things I find a little bit irritating. The first is that some of the chapters are told from the perspective of the cat Yeti, and I don't think that works very well, to be honest. It doesn't really take me out of the story, though, because it only happens here and there. The other thing is very personal. I don't really care for the trope of an amicable divorce. As a teacher, I see what divorce does to families, and while she does have adult children, I just feel like, that doesn't make her appear to me to be a very reliable character, a character who makes deep commitments. If she's just feeling like, oh, marriage is like something like clothing that I can put on and take off, it just doesn't work for me. So I find that irritating. Also, on top of that, 2 days after she got her divorce, she's already interested in a new man. Like, again, doesn't seem like she makes commitments very well. But those things aside, I will be reading book 2, and I think at that point, that will be the last book in the series. I will certainly be reading other Diane Kelly mysteries. Then I decided to start David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. There was a time in my life when I read Dickens novels like candy. I loved Charles Dickens. I would read them around the winter time. So I am currently reading David Copperfield. I am currently on page 198. We're following Davy, who 6 months before he was born, his father passed away, and he grew up with his mother, who is like this very sweet, loving mother. Unfortunately, she marries a man who is neither sweet nor loving, really treats Davy poorly. He then ends up going to a boarding school where he's also treated poorly, but he also is infatuated by this young boy who gets away with murder. I apologize if you hear noise in the background. The washer is being emptied. Anyway, moving on. What I love about this book is how Davy is telling us the story from a child's perspective, and there is so much dramatic irony here where the reader knows what is actually happening, but Davy is so naive that he thinks that, you know, people are doing him a favor and they're not. So I'm just really invested in this book, but I'm also itching to read other things at the same time. So I am currently also reading The Number One Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. I'm really liking this book. It's very anecdotal. So we follow Precious Ramatwe, who is living in Botswana. She is the first female detective, rather she's running her first female detective agency in Botswana. There is a mystery element to it, but it's like each chapter is like something about her life. It's marketed as a cozy mystery, however, there are some elements that are not cozy. So Precious marries this abusive man. There is some sexual violence actually discussed in some of the chapters. Not in graphic detail, but I wouldn't call this a cozy mystery. So just know that going in. I also expect that while there will be a mystery, the mystery element is not as strong as in other mysteries. I'm liking this so far. Alexander McCall Smith reminds me of a French author, Eric Emmanuel Schmitt. So if you read French literature, you might be familiar with him. These books are feel good. They might include some content that's a little bit more mature, more difficult to read, but ultimately they're feel-good stories. I watched an interview with Alexander McCall Smith, and it's clear that that was what he was intending. So I'm reading these 2 books at the same time, and I hopefully will finish this weekend and this by the end of May. I really need to continue reading it because every time I pick it up, I just continue reading Dickens. I really think that Dickens does a great job at characters. His characters aren't complex. They are in many ways caricatures, but it works because ultimately his stories are social commentaries. And I'm always on board with his social views. So I just need to commit and continue reading this. Let me know what books you are reading. And I know that there is like middle grade May, I think is happening. I have so many middle grade books I need to get to, so I might join that. But I'm not always very good at keeping up with challenges. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.